I want to thank our nominees for taking time out of your morning and letting us ask you some questions and getting to know you better. I think all of us in this room realize what a commitment being a board member is, and so we thank you for your willingness to be a nominee and a trustee. So I also want to thank all the parents for being here today and voting. Vote. Okay, so we have 6 questions. They are compiled from, or they're taken from all the parent questions that were sent to the administrative team. We're going to ask 6 questions, the 4 of us. Each question will be asked to each candidate. Each candidate will get to answer first twice, second twice, and third twice. We will let you know the order of the answering before each question. There will be a 2-minute time limit for each answer. And for the sake of efficiency, I think Scott's going to be the timekeeper, and he'll give you a little 1-minute, 45-second warning, just so you can wrap up. And then if we have any time left afterwards and you guys can still stay, we'll ask if if there's any questions, we'll open it up for a few minutes. Okay, so I will go first with question number 1. And the order for this question is Omar, Danielle, Michael. Oh, well wait, sorry, don't start yet. I want to give you guys like 30 seconds to introduce yourselves. Say your name, tell us who your children or child is, and maybe one thing about yourself, like what you do for a living or what your hobby is. So, Omar, do you want to start?
Sure. Morning, everyone. I'm Omar Joseph, and I am the father of Akeem Joseph, who is in K-8. My wife and I are second-year parents at the school. Akeem has an October birthday, so he went to TK last year. My wife and I are both attorneys as well. And I work for the California Teachers Association as their executive director for 3 of their affiliated local teacher associations. So I think like many families at this school, my background itself is very international. I was born in Australia, grew up in India, went to undergrad in Indiana, law school in Washington, D.C., worked in New York, and we've been Angelinos now for the last 11 years. So we're really hoping that we can do our part and help this school succeed. Our kids go to.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Danielle Mason. My husband and I have been parents at Goethe for 4 years now. My son started in kindergarten then. He's in the 3rd grade. My daughter Caroline is 2.5 years old and she's in preschool right now, so she's a future Goethe student. She'll be here in 2 years for TK. She's got that sibling thing going on, so that works in our favor. And I'm a working mom. I work for Teleflora. I'm the Vice President of Consumer Marketing. Teleflora is part of the Wonderful Company. If you've heard of the Wonderful Company, they own some large CPG brands like Fiji Water, Halos, Clementines, Pistachio Wonderful, Palm Wonderful, as well as they've started 2 charter schools. And so that's pretty exciting in the Central Valley, which have been very successful. I'm very integrated within the Wonderful Company, so I'm the lead for philanthropy for my organization, as well as operational excellence. And I'm really excited to be here. Goethe means a lot to my family.
Michael Jimenez, if you don't know me, I've been doing a good job. I've been a parent at Goethe for 5 years. My son Nico is now in 4th grade. I grew up in Los Angeles. My wife grew up in Michigan, but is German. And we chose Goethe because of the dual immersion. And we've been pleased to be a part of the school for all these years. I actually started my work here as a consultant a long time ago, and then shifted over to something more fun, which was the garden. And now I've been the board of trustee for the last 2 years. I'm looking forward to 1 more year, if possible, to serve you and to represent the school. And I think that there's a lot of critical issues that we're facing that my experience and my professional experience, my experience as a board member and my experience professionally can really help. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so question number one, and we'll talk a little bit more. What is your motivation to run for the parent board rep position, and what are your qualifications? So again, we're gonna do Omar, Danielle, Michael, and we'll start with Omar.
I'll let you know when there's 45 seconds left.
Thank you. So, well, first and foremost, I'm a parent, and I think like all other parents of this school, you know, I want what's best for my child, and I want the school to succeed. I'm also the executive director of 3 teachers associations, and in my current role, I have to deal with many issues relating to K-12 education in California. That includes things like the California Ed Code, the Brown Act, dealing with school districts and their administrations. I deal a lot with the LA County Office of Education, deal with school finance issues, school boards, and do a lot of community outreach. So part of my job involves creating bridges between various stakeholder groups, such as teachers, parents, and school district administrators. That can mean dealing with compliance with laws and contracts, building relationships with communities, dealing with internal governance issues, and also because of my experience as an attorney, I am very attentive to detail and am well versed in conflict resolution. So over the last year, I was approached by several parents and teachers at the school who asked for help relating to school site council issues and Goethe Board Governance Committee. And some of these folks made me aware of several concerns that they had. So I attempted to help to the extent that I could. And I am running for a seat now on the board to do my part and to help to the best extent possible, given my experience and skills.
Thank you. Thank you. Danielle?
My family loves this school. My son is in the 3rd grade here, and he is thriving like you wouldn't believe. The teachers here are phenomenal, and the IB philosophy means a lot to us. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, my son was interrogating me about something, lots and lots of questions. I use interrogation lightly, but in response, he said, "Ben, you really have a lot of questions for me." And he said, "Curiosity opens my mind, Mom." And I was like, wow, that's a real mic drop moment for you. And wow, this is really ingrained in the person that you are becoming. And this is making me a better parent too. And that makes me feel really invested in this school. But you know, last June I started to notice that there was some discord. There was some discord between the board and admin, and I just remember watching a lot of board meetings where, you know, I was inspired by the teachers really standing together, shoulder to shoulder, and really supporting each other. And I wanted to be a part of the effort to really bridge the gap. And so I actually applied to be on the board last August, and I wanted to be on this board now for about a year. And I think, you know, my qualifications are really appropriate for this position. I'm the vice president at a major company in Los Angeles, and I oversee 12 direct reports, which means I oversee 12 departments within my organization. Collaboration, teamwork, operational excellence, being entrepreneurial, that's incredibly important to my organization, as well as processes. And I think that I would be able to really impact and influence maybe how processes are developed here and how we can kind of bridge the gaps that we're seeing in this school and maybe help maintain teacher retention.
Thank you.
I was struggling with whether I should do this again for another year, or whether I should do this. And I decided to throw my hat back in the ring because I think our school is at a crossroads. And unfortunately, the crossroads we're at don't just end outside of our classroom doors. We are under assault in Sacramento, unfortunately, by the California Teachers Association, which has put forward some really severe impediments to charter schools. And we're not going to win that battle. Today I'm meeting with Richard Bloom, our assembly member for this area, and I doubt we're going to convince him to change his vote. But we're going to give it a try. But make no mistake that is a huge problem that we are facing. In addition to that, as you all know, or maybe you don't know, the board just switched over from being a the Board of Education switched over from being a charter board to now a pro-union board. And as Jackie Goldberg said very well, who I've known for some 30 years, this is just the beginning. And so there's 3 elections going on next year, and we need to we need to really work hard to maintain our relationship with LUSD, to improve our school so that we are beyond reproach. I think there's a lot that I can do to continue that effort, including the rolling out of the middle school. And so I hope that you will consider my candidacy again this next year.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. So I have question 2, and the order for this one will be Danielle, Michael, Omar. So as a board member, how would you support the recruitment and retention of quality staff as well as the efforts to close the achievement gap?
Well, there have been a lot of studies that show that teacher retention actually contributes to academic success. So they both really tie together. So, you know, as you know, over the years, we've seen some struggles with teacher retention at this school, and there are several reasons. One is that they're not paid competitive salaries with LAUSD teachers. Another is, you know, last June we saw, you know, at that board meeting that I mentioned, as a result of some of that discord, we lost Mr. Levy and we lost Mr. George. And, you know, we always say every year that, oh, our kids are nimble, but they don't have to be nimble. And so there has to be made some efforts to retain these teachers, especially when we talk about 3rd to 5th grade, where the achievement gap is more significant typically. And so how do we close that achievement gap? Well, how do we offer tutoring? How do we get those IAs back in the classroom? How do we manage the budget a little bit better? How do we really show the teachers that they're part of this organization and that we really empower them? And I think that we need a lot of steps. There needs to be a lot of steps taken to make that happen here. I also think that, you know, the quality teachers that we have, how do we make them feel valued? Some of them might feel stuck here because their visas are dependent on being at Goethe, but we never want them to feel stuck here. We want them to feel like they're here because they want to be here. So I think that's really critical to achieving that closure in the achievement gap that we're seeing right now.
Thank you.
So last year, at the end of the budget year, there was an effort to no longer offer teacher retention bonuses, and I led the effort on the board to retain those for this year. Unfortunately, the board voted to keep them. This year, we do need to increase our teacher salaries. We don't want to be unrealistic so that it's not sustainable, but I think we're on the right track with enrollment to boost our enrollment from what it was last year. And my first priority with that boost in enrollment would be to increase teacher salaries, not only to give them just a retention bonus. In addition to that, I also disagreed with the recommendation of the former executive director that we should cut IAs. We did cut IAs, and I believe that part of our effort to keep teachers happy has been that has suffered because of the loss of those IAs. It has also affected the school in a number of ways that are not always clearly visible. I plan to vote to reinstate the IAs that we had in the past, and I think that it's foolhardy for us not to do that. And hopefully this time, if they're in the budget at the beginning, we'll have an easier time to hire them at the beginning of the school.
So I agree with a lot of what has been said. I definitely think we need to secure better wages for our teachers that are competitive with LEU and also represent a decent middle class wage. So I think that definitely would help with retention. And you know, at the end of the day, I think it's important for all of us to remember that the students and the teachers are at the very heart of this school. And if you're not going to have teachers who are happy or who are looking for better pay in other districts, we're going to lose a lot of talent. And I think, you know, offering them better wages will not only help keep teachers happier, but we're going to keep more experienced teachers and our talented teachers at our school. So I think that's going to help a lot with the achievement gap. I mean, having experienced teachers at the school, and I know this is not going to be an overnight process, but working on these goals continuously, we can achieve them. We also have to obviously help with teachers who might be foreign nationals who have visa issues, and we need to make sure that those are taken care of as well. I mean, after all, as a dual immersion school with an international outlook, we do try to attract teachers from other countries, and we need to assist to the extent that we can to make that happen.
Thank you. So I have question number 3, and the order will be Michael, then Omar, then Danielle. Okay. And it's, as a board member, how would you foster transparency in how the board relays information to the community?
One of my first experiences with the board was when I realized that 2 things were happening. One is that we were making budget decisions in closed session, and number 2 is that we never offered to the community a copy of the budget that we were approving. And so I think that was a first step. I think since then we've done a lot to encourage transparency with regard to what we put on our agendas, the noticing of our committee meetings, our board committee meetings, and also offering an opportunity for people to participate. Last year we had budget forums. This year I understand we're not doing that, but that's not my decision. But I'm very pleased that the School Site Council has expanded its focus, and that there are a lot more people willing to participate in a lot of different areas. I sat on the site expansion committee, and I still do, and it's been wonderful to see both parents and teachers participating on that, and that was not something that happened very much when I first got on board. So I'm very happy to see the improvements, but I think there's a lot more we can do to maintain that level of transparency.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's me. Let's pay attention to the kid. I think, again, we really need to listen to the voices of the parents and the teachers, and the students and the teachers are the most important folks at the school, and the students are represented by their parents. As a board, the Goethe Charter School Board is governed by the Brown Act in California. So that would mean, we have to be, we have to notice meetings properly. We have to make most decisions, almost all decisions, have to be made in open session. And I know there have been a lot of concerns that have been expressed by a lot of parents that they're not sure of when meetings are taking place or when decisions are happening about very important issues. And also that a lot of decisions have been made behind closed doors. So one of the things I would work towards achieving as a board member would be maximum transparency, as in to the maximum extent allowed by law, not just doing the bare minimum to comply with the Brown Act, and make sure that everyone feels like their voice is heard, and that they are able to see how the decision-making process actually works and plays out.
I read the strategic plan for Goethe, and it talks about, the goal of achieving operational excellence. And in order to do that, transparency is absolutely needed and necessary. Transparency among stakeholders, so the parents, admin, and the board, it's critical. And I feel like in the past year, a recurring issue that I'm hearing about is the executive director. Where is the transparency behind what's going on with that search for the executive director? And it's a year later. And so, I'm reading comments again on Facebook. My hope is that we'll hear about it at the next board meeting. I trust that the board will update us at the next board meeting. But where is that sense of, I feel aware, I know when I'm going to hear about this. And transparency is critical to that. Transparency is critical to also trust. And so I think that's very critical to establish within this organization, as well as, you know, my company subscribes to the Toyota model, where when there's a problem, we actually celebrate the fact that we found it early, because then we can determine the root cause and then we can figure out how to fix it, versus pushing it off to the side and then everything breaks and then we're in a problematic situation at the end of the day. So if there are budgetary issues, you know, like for example, last year when there were budget issues with retaining those IAs, we probably should have known about those earlier on, because budget issues don't just happen at the end of the year. They happen early and they become worse, and there's a trickle-down effect. So transparency is the only way of actually solving those problems that occur, versus hiding them and hoping that they're going to just work out.
Thank you.
I think you're up again.
I am up again. I didn't realize that. I'm up again. And this time the order is going to be Omar, Danielle, then Michael. How do you see the board's role in regard to the day-to-day operations of the school?
So the board's role isn't that of an executive. That's why we have administrators, right? We have our executive director, we have our principal, we have our assistant principal, we have our director of operations. The board's role, the way I see it, is to provide broad oversight and to ensure that the school is working towards fulfilling its mission and making sure that we do so in a way that complies with the law. One of the things that I've heard in terms of concerns from parents and teachers is there's a lot of micromanaging going on. And that's one of the things that I would want to work to address. I think the board needs to really trust its team, which is the administration, to do its job. Of course, at the end of the day, if there are concerns that the administration isn't fulfilling its job, the board has a duty to address that. However, the board's role is not to micromanage and can't be to dictate to everyone how things are run. So,
building off of what Omar said, micromanaging only leads to paralysis. It means that you're micromanaging a team and nothing's actually getting done because nobody's feeling empowered to do what they need to do. So I think the board's role is to really trust the admin and the teachers to do the right thing for the school. The board's role is to govern, to advise, and to lead, and to be support, and to be collaborative. In addition to that, I would add that the board's role is also to collaborate with the GPA. And that's the way that they're going to find out what the parent issues are and what the parent concerns are at this school. That's the way they're going to seek that awareness. And so, you know, I think Omar had made some really great points. We have a great admin team in place at this school, and really, when we talk about teacher and admin retention, nobody wants to feel micromanaged. That doesn't lead to job satisfaction. It's actually demoralizing. And so they need to feel empowered to make decisions, and they need to feel empowered that when a parent has a question, they feel like they can effectively answer that question for them and feel like it's appropriate for them to do so.
So I'm going to make sure that everyone understands that if you vote for me, I am supporting hiring an executive director. So part of the problem we've had this year is we do not have a leader at this school. And so if you are thinking of not voting for me because I support an executive director for this school, then I'm just giving you your answer. Don't vote for me, because I will absolutely vote to get an executive director. I have seen so many issues that where the governance and the day-to-day operations have not been clear in the last year, and it has wasted a lot of time and a lot of effort. And so I believe we must have an executive director of this organization. I believe that LAUSD has been patient with us for not having one, but that if we don't have one next year, it is going to have significant consequences on us with their perception of how our school is running. And it's not a good year to have the LAUSD not think well of us. So I am wholeheartedly supporting an executive director for our school. And so please understand that about me. I would love not to be involved in more things. I would love to stay out of things. I would love to just do governance. And I hope with an executive director that that's what will come next year.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's my turn. Have you read
Oh, wait.
our,
Raise
sorry,
hand.
oh, the order, yes. First Danielle, then Michael, and then Omar. Have you read our strategic plan, and how do you propose we keep moving in the direction of fulfilling that plan? And since it's a 2016 to 2020 plan, what is your position on developing the next 5-year plan?
I have read the strategic plan, and I could talk all day about the strategic plan if you give me the time. I'm going to talk about it in 2 minutes, though, because there are two things that really stick out to me as being really relevant and things that we can do. And one is maximizing growth for the school, right? Increasing enrollment, and how do we do that? Well, fundraising is critical to that. And we saw in the past year a dip in our ability to fundraise. In sustaining what we had done in the previous years. And I think there are several reasons that impacted that. One is that, Biggie, you used to manage fundraising for the school, but with salary cuts, that was removed from your scope of work. And so that responsibility went to Ngozi. And then when Ngozi left in November, nobody was managing that responsibility on the admin team. Because it was never reassigned. And here's the problem with that. A business best practice is that somebody that's employed by an organization should be managing fundraising and revenue for the school. And so that just trickled down to the parents to be doing that. And I have to say, they did a phenomenal job. They did a phenomenal job fundraising, but they weren't able to meet the goals. And they really shouldn't be responsible for that type of job that's so tremendous. And so that naturally will impact revenue for the school. So I think it's imperative that needs to go back to admin. And I'll quickly say the second thing is board development. Board development is critical. We have 9 spots. We have 7 people seated right now. I applied for the board last August. I never got that interview. So I wrote a board recruitment process document literally in 2 weeks that I utilized my resources at my company, the people who started the charter schools, for wonderful. And so that I'll be presenting on Monday at the board meeting.
Thank you.
Michael?
In October, we had a retreat, the Board of Trustees. And at that retreat, the board authorized the hiring of somebody to do fundraising. I was a development specialist. That position was never filled. So I just want everyone to understand that we listened. We authorized the position, but it was never filled. The parents have done a terrific job with regard to fundraising, but what really drives our school is enrollment. Okay, and we just had a lottery where we had 454 applicants, including our existing students, as well as our existing students. And we need to work really hard to try and get as many of those 454 kids to show up on August 16th. If we don't have 454 kids, then our budget goes down. And then everything in our strategic plan that we love and we want to do can't happen. German acquisition is a very great program. The district is watching us very closely as to whether or not we succeed in that. But if we, for some reason, cut German acquisition, we're going to further make it difficult for us to meet our diversity goals. So for me, the way to implement the strategic plan is to bring in kids, okay, and to fill those seats from TK through 6.
So I too have read the strategic plan. I think it's going to be a team effort in coming up with the new strategic plan. It can't be a singular effort. I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to listen. I think any discussion of a new strategic plan is going to involve increasing enrollment, of course, fundraising to a huge extent, but it's also going to involve things that we've talked about before, like teacher retention, our IB curriculum, student success. So it's one of those things where you really have to rely on all stakeholders to provide input. I think too often decisions like this end up becoming ones where one person gets vested in a particular idea and then wants to push that idea forward. But we have to remember it's a team effort. And I think one of the concerns that has been brought to my attention as a parent is there hasn't been much of a team effort, or there hasn't been much of listening to many of the stakeholders involved, and I want to change that.
Thank you.
Okay, and our last question, and the order is Michael, Omar, Danielle. How do you think the middle school opening will impact the financial stability and budget of our elementary program?
When I started at this school, we had over a $2 million reserve. The whole purpose of that, building that reserve, was that so we could expand. We were never contemplating being a TK through 5 school. Ironically, in 2012, when I first started getting involved, we actually had a proposal but we actually signed a lease to occupy a space that would have taken us from TK through 12. And we did that because that was always our intention. So I look at the expansion of the school into further grades as the reason why we built up that reserve. And I want to see us expand. But I also think you have to maintain the TK through 5. And so, as I said, I think we need to retain our teachers. I think we need to reinstate our AAs. And we need to focus on solving the gap between our acquisition kids and our immersion kids. So all of that can be done if we dedicate the money that we have available, and also that we drive enrollment, and that enrollment gets higher, and that we don't have years of 400 kids anymore, but we have years of 430 kids, 450 kids, even 500 kids a year. And I think that's both virtue of us maintaining the elementary school and expanding into the upper grades.
I think any decision regarding the expansion to the middle school has to be deliberated extensively and shouldn't be made in haste. I think we really need to consider issues relating to the current finances of the school, allocation of resources, and whether any money being spent or be contemplated being spent to expand to the middle school would be in the best interest of our children, or could be better used for the TK through 5 program. I think this discussion also just can't be had in isolation of considering the impact on our neighbor school, on Marina Del Rey Middle School. I think part of what we're teaching our kids is good citizenship, and good citizenship involves being good neighbors. And we're housed on their campus, and we really need to consider the impact any expansion of our middle school would have on that community and on their students as well. I think we need to engage with them, listen to them, including the many concerns that have already been expressed to the board, and really work to minimize our school's impact on that school. We really have to ensure that their students are not negatively affected by our desire to grow, while at the same time making sure that we're doing what's best for our kids.
I want nothing more than this school to have a middle school. I remember touring 5 years ago. Michael Siegel gave me my tour, and he talked about the middle school, and I got really excited. However, I'm very concerned about it impacting the school that is already here, especially when I see in the 3rd to 5th grade classrooms that there are no IAs there right now, and it's critical that they get those IAs back in the room. And the achievement gap is only going to get bigger. Without them there, they're not getting that individualized learning that they really need. And so I think it should not be at the expense of the elementary school, that in order to open the middle school, we have to make sure that everything is aligned and everything is in a row. And what's that strategic plan, too, to get the middle school launched? How is that all working? And we haven't heard that much about it. And so if we're hearing about budget concerns, well, we have money in the reserves. Okay, well, how is that going to help now the elementary school that already exists? So I think that there's a little bit of a lack of awareness on the parent side of how is this really playing out? What's being really strategically done to accomplish this and make sure that we can handle this with a budget that we have that exists right now? Also perception-wise too, if a middle school were to open this fall and we didn't get those IAs back in the classroom for 3rd to 5th grade, how are those parents going to feel seeing that their children's needs maybe aren't really being met, but we have this new middle school opening and maybe we're not quite ready for it? So I think there's a little bit of a lack of awareness with where we are strategically in this.
Thank you. Okay, so that is, those were our 6 questions. Do you guys have a few minutes if we just
Sure.
open the floor for 1 or 2 questions? Brief questions? Yes.
Hi. By the way, good timing with the bell. Omar, I'm sort of shocked. Only one thing really shocked me here. I have a lot of agreements and disagreements with what went on. But to talk about considering the middle school, I don't know if you're aware, and I'm concerned about the affiliation with CTA, who is sort of trying to end charter schools, in my belief. You probably disagree, in the state of California. But I don't know if you're aware that Marina Del Rey Middle School, I just looked it up, and my belief is that they are operating at 24% proficiency in reading and 16 to 17% in mathematics. Okay, so they are, in my mind, sadly, tragically, not a viable option for the kids in this area. We need them to succeed, and I hope they succeed, and I would do anything in my power to help them. But if we make that the reason we have or do not have a middle school, I think that's a serious error. I think what we can do instead is offer them an incredibly viable alternative, and that's what we're doing. Secondly, I don't know if you guys are aware of well, I'm sure you are, of the climate in the state with the governor, with our new head of private instruction, who wants to end charters, and with the most importantly, the change in the board, in the LAUSD board. If we didn't jump, it is my firm belief that we would not have a middle school for easily the next 10 years. We're about, the board has changed.
Michael, do you have a question?
Yeah,
I just want
sorry, Omar, if you can, and I think you're a great guy, but that was shocking to me. So that's my question is, what do you think of that?
What do I think of all that you said?
Well, primarily.
I'll put the timer for 60 minutes.
Primarily, I was responding to you saying we have to be good citizens with this school, and we do.
I think I get it.
But that should be the major or a major consideration as to whether we move forward. And secondly, do you see that the change in climate on the LAUSD board could make it possible for us to never have a middle school, or at least well after any of these children graduate?
Okay. Well, thanks for the question. I disagree that the California Teachers Association is anti-charter. I'm sure you maybe you're not aware, but CTA does have charter schools that have CTA members in it. So I think I disagree with the premise of what was said, that CTA is anti-charter. I don't think that's accurate. Also, in terms of my answer about the middle school, what I did say is we need to be good neighbors. We need to consider the middle school. I, again, disagree, Michael, when you say that, sadly, MDR is not a viable option for students. I disagree. I mean, there are students going there. And just as we are concerned about our kids, I'm sure that community is very concerned about their kids. I did not say that we don't need to expand to a middle school or don't have any desire to or shouldn't work towards it, but we should do it in a way that impacts our neighbors as little as possible and doesn't negatively impact that community. So that's where I think maybe you and I have differing views on how to go forward. I'm certainly not one of those people who thinks we should expand our school at all costs. It doesn't matter the cost to the other school, and it doesn't matter about the cost to our own school. As I think a number of parents and a number of teachers and administrators have expressed to me, there are concerns about whether we're going about this in the right way, and whether we're doing this, very fast without adequate contemplation for the impact on our own kids in terms of the finances of the school, and whether our resources could be better spent on the school that we already have as opposed to a school that we want. So that's my position, and I think we can, if we do decide that expanding to a middle school is the best course forward, I think we can do it in a way that still doesn't negatively impact our neighbors.
Thank you.
May I?
Yeah, sure.
I would like to know basically on their communication work. Basically, I assume you would be representative of the parent body because you voted by the parents into the position. So I wondered, how do you intend to stay in contact with the parents, you as a person, and I'm basically seeing this outside the GPA. And in addition to that, because you're voted by the parents into position, not by the GPA into position, then there would be direct contact that you need to maintain, and how do you share out the information that you need or want to procure?
I don't think I'm understanding the role in the same way that you are, in the sense that while you're elected by the parents, you're actually not speaking on behalf of parents. You are doing what is best for the school and for the student body. And so you're really representative of parents, administration, stakeholders, and you're the board governing body. And so while I do agree with a lot of what you said, that collaboration is absolutely necessary in order to achieve what is the end goal, which is the best for the school and the best for the students, I think collaboration with the GPA is critical. I know you mentioned in addition, but potentially attending GPA meetings, being available to parents for Q&As. I think actually, doing your own sleuthing on the side with parents probably doesn't feel appropriate because you're not actually being representative then of the parent body as a whole. But I think, what you mentioned is important. You do want to have a parent voice, but it's not just the parent voice that you're representing. You're representing someone who has an area of expertise and skill and business acumen that can lead the school to maximize success and growth.
Yeah, I piggybacking off of that, I think again, while we certainly would be representative for the parents, once you're on the board, you're an equal member of the board, and you're there to do what's right for the school. That being said, obviously we would want to make sure that we're listening to our fellow parents' voices, and we want to make sure we do that by listening to the GPA. But of course, look, at the end of the day, this is not a position where I anticipate not being accessible to folks. Of course, I will listen to any concerns that are brought to my attention. But if I get elected to the board, once that happens, then my role would be to make sure that I'm doing what I think is right for the school as a whole, while considering the input of the parents.
I'm going to go back to the middle school for a second. We've already started the middle school, so this discussion of we should go slow it's a done deal. Okay, the board voted last month to do that, so there is no going back on that. And if we did, we would basically be ending our material revision at this point. We also asked for space on November for the 6th grade, and we've been provided that space. And so unless we're willing to give back that space, which would open up another can of worms, we're basically committed. So I don't want you to leave here thinking that the middle school is still up for debate. It's not, it's just a question of which rooms we're going to occupy for the middle school here. We have an effort going forward to look for alternative space. We had 2 options last year. Both were rejected by LAUSD, the Charter School Services Division, but we're gonna keep going on that, and we have some viable options to pursue in the future, because at some point, even as Marina Del Rey Middle School continues to operate, there's only a limited number of classrooms that we can also be eligible for here under the current Prop 39 regulations. And so at some point, we're gonna run out of space with regard to what we could do here on campus. But obviously, our preference from the beginning, going all the way back to 2012, was to be not co-located, but if we're going to be co-located, to minimize our footprint on any particular campus. And so that's why we have a site expansion committee, which is to try to find an alternative location off the campus so that we don't continue to increase our footprint here beyond next year.
The communication part?
I'll just say that there's a debate about what is a parent representative on the board, and it has not been resolved.
Okay.
I continue to make myself available to parents in any capacity that I can. But yeah, I think we ultimately have to resolve, is the parent elected representative truly a parent representative, or as Danielle said, are you just elected by the parents and you are a representative of all the same interests as everyone else?
So the role is unclear.
Well, yeah, it's unclear in my
which is kind of a horrible position.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. The ballots will be distributed on Monday, correct?
Today, and they will have statements along with the ballot that the candidates have provided. And so everybody can get an impression of what the candidate stands for. And then starting on Monday, the ballots can be returned for the whole next week. Friday, end of day, I think 4 p.m. we said is the end of the election time frame. And then Monday is a day off, Memorial Day, and Tuesday we will do the counting of the votes.
So ballots are due by Friday, the 24th at 4 p.m. to
That
the
is
office.
correct, yes.
And how many parent representatives can?
Two,
Oh,
you'll
yes.
select two.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there are 2 seats available. They are elected for 1 year from July 1st of this year to June 30th of next year, which is the same as our fiscal year in the school. They will be seated at the annual meeting this year, which is on June 17th. Will start their term on July 1st though, because there's never a meeting between the annual meeting and in August, which means if we didn't have a meeting in between, there would be a time frame where no parent elected board member would be seated, so therefore they get seated at the annual meeting. I just quickly, when the ballots go out, you will find an envelope that has on the outside a slip attached to it. That slip is made for the family count, so that each family only has one vote, not multiple votes. When you bring back the ballot, the slip will be taken off the envelope. So your ballot is in the envelope, it's sealed, but we mark off who returned the ballot so that we make sure that families don't vote twice or multiple times. The 2 things will be separated. The sealed envelope goes in a box and the slip goes in a box, so that we cannot say who voted what, but that we know that someone voted or a family voted or not. If your family has multiple households because of divorce or whatever, then you need to come see the office and we will be happy to give a second ballot to you, but As long as we don't know, there's only one ballot distributed to your family, and that ballot goes in the older sibling's backpack or red folder.
Can you put it in the red folder, or does it have to be handed in to you?
It can be in the red folders. The teachers will be on the lookout next week to find all the ballots that are in red folders or backpacks for that matter, because some children have them everywhere. So we will make sure that we hopefully get all the ballots from children. We also will have some boxes out at the drop-off area so that parents have it easy to submit their ballots.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you,
again.
Fran.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.